than any American city with as many people, because it's all of the places that sprawl. Multi-story buildings are very rare, and so if you go to the largest city in Tanzania, Dar es Salaam, has over 4 million people, and from the air you cannot see the end of the city. You see the horizon first, because all of the buildings, except for as many as I can count on one hand, are one story. And so while I was in Bunda, the main person that I worked with was a man named Steve Chuchu. He is a recording artist there. I brought back one of his albums they gave me, but I have yet to get to work. I was going to have that playing this morning, but oh well. He's in his early 30s or so, married, has 2 kids, and it was really nice getting to listen to him and his band. He's a choir director at one of the local churches, and being a choir director means a whole lot more there than just directing the choir as we think of it, because he has to compose all of their backing tracks. So that they don't use live bands in choir music. Everything will be done on a keyboard, and so he will sit down, record maybe 10 or 12 different tracks on his keyboard, put them all together, and then he'll usually be playing with them whenever they perform. And he'll have people in the choir that choreograph it, because a whole lot of the music there is paired with dance, because dance is a very important art in African, but especially Tanzanian culture. So for a couple of days while I was in Bunda, I was invited to go to Marijuana Village. The man who invited me was Pastor Tukiko, who I mentioned on the Bunda slide. He is the guy that's trying to take a nap. The other guy that's sitting reading is a man named Ray. He's from California, but he spent most of his life in Africa as an MK or as a missionary himself. And he was in Tanzania to deliver something to Pastor Tukiko, who invited him out to the village, and then Pastor Tukiko invited me out as well. And it was a really good experience going to the village. I didn't get to do much observation while I was there, because in Bunda, every couple of days I'd go observe another worship team or choir practice. But here, I was just left to my own devices. And about 20 or so kids decided they wanted to hang out with me. We did speak each other's language. I only knew enough Swahili to greet them and ask their names, and they knew even less English. They could say what their names were, and that was not necessarily in English. So we communicate mostly through hand gestures and expressions of emotion, but we spent a lot of time together over those days, played some games with each other, and the 2 that I got to know best were Jose and Christoph. I don't have a good picture of Christoph, but Jose is the kid there. You can already see from that picture, Tanzanians don't smile in pictures. You'll see more of that as we go on. Next slide, please. So, after staying a month in Bunda, my host and I took a bus ride to a place called Kayaga. Kayaga is poorer than Bunda was. Bunda is not wealthy, but they have cash. In Kayaga, they have the land, and it's good land, but they don't have cash. And diets started changing there, because in Bunda, most of the food consists of beans and rice. In Kayaga, they don't grow rice. What they do instead is beans and plantains, which got a little getting used to. It took a little getting used to, but it's quite good. But there in Kayaga, if you go to other markets, you'll see bunches and bunches of bananas. 1 or 2 of those bunches would be equivalent to the whole supermarket section of bananas, and they'll have over 100 of those bunches lining the alleyway. But we did an AV recording studio seminar. When I say we, my host did it, I sat there and observed. Which observing was a bit harder in Kayaga, because instead of getting to observe the music, most of what I was observing was my host talking in Swahili. which I didn't understand, so I didn't get too much from it. But I still got to connect with the people there. The people left a large impression on me everywhere I went, because Tanzanian hospitality makes the Southern hospitality that we like to talk about so much, it makes it look like a joke. It is common practice for if a stranger who shows up at your house to let him in. If he needs food, you give him food, you give him drink, and you don't tell him when to leave. The guests are never told when to leave in Tanzanian culture. They are supposed to say when they are planning on leaving, but if that's a week from today or even a month, so be it. The host will be gracious to take care of them. They don't have much necessarily, but they'll give all that they have to take care of you. And in Kayaga, it was the same as Bunda. There is a man that is probably somewhere in that picture, but I'm not certain quite where. He had what's referred to as a yogurt shop. Their yogurt is different from ours. It's more liquidy, and they use it as a drink. But he invited us to his shop. If we got yogurt, we were expecting to pay for it. He said it was on him. And so we spent some time there. We visited a school, which, again, I can't tell where the guy is in the picture, but he's probably in there. On the very opening slide, there's a picture of a group of people. That was at the school. He invited us out to his school because he wanted us to meet his students, meet his teachers, and see what they were doing. And what they were doing was impressive. They were trying to give people who had failed the national exams a second chance at education and life. And then the following picture was the view from the church that we did the seminar at. Pastor Gideon, one of the ones I worked with, it was his church. He was, in his former days, a recording artist like Steve is. So we got to listen to some of his music. He keeps traditional instruments because he doesn't associate them with paganism necessarily. He's trying to do some of that same stuff that my host is. And so we got to experiment with the traditional instruments at his house, which was quite enjoyable. Next slide, please. The last place that I spent much time was a town called Nzega. When I was leaving Tanzania, I was at the airport. One of the guys looked at me, looked at my bag, and just said, "You've been to Nzega, haven't you?" I just kind of looked down confused and pointed at my bag. It's covered in red dust. Nzega is a very dusty place. And it was on the way to Nzega that I encountered one of the only bits of Tanzanian thinking that I could not wrap my mind around. It's their belief that if you open all the windows on a bus, the dust will leave quickly. It doesn't work that way. That when I arrived in Nzega, I was covered from head to toe in red dust. It is redder than the clay that we have here. So my bag was red, everything inside my bag it seemed was red, I was red. It was a fun time getting clean from all that. But in Nzega, there had been a seminar the past year, and they wanted to see how much people had retained from it. So my host came back down and did an evaluation of sorts. What we learned was that most of the people didn't remember that much, but the people that did remember had done great things with it. Because it had been about how to be creative in evangelism, not just do a few methods that you had been taught, but to be able to adapt on the fly and come up with new methods to reach different people. And the pastors that had attended the seminar were the ones who retained it the best, and they had come up with multiple new ways on their own of evangelism. And listening to them was really good. But the main person that I got to work with and got to know was a man named Zephaniah, who was one of my host's closest friends. He's the guy in that picture that's got his thumb up. I looked and looked for a good picture of all three of us, but I couldn't find one because we were all just laughing in that there would be someone who was not really looking at the camera when those pictures were taken. because Zephaniah was a very, very funny man. He and my host had a lot of inside jokes, and I was led into that. The main one was that when Tanzanians don't understand what's being said, primarily if it's being spoken in English, they'll just say, yeah, to whatever is being said. If you may have just asked them, like, hey, can you give me your car? And they'll just say, yeah, because they don't know what you're saying. Zephaniah spoke English, but he would choose to just tune out whatever we were saying, or just act as if he didn't understand. So Stephanie would ask him a question, and his response would always be, yeah. Next slide, please. So that was a view from my hotel in Mwanza. Mwanza is the second largest city in Tanzania. It's got about 700,000 in comparison to Dar es Salaam's 4.5 million. So there's a very big difference, but it is one of the cities that has an airport. So that's why I was staying there. I needed to leave, but I didn't really want to, because when I was in Tanzania, I just felt at home. I really didn't have much. When I was in Bunda, I had one room. I had no privacy in that room. I got used to changing without privacy, because no matter where I stood in that room, you could see me from the window. It was fun at first, but I got used to it. I got used to not having too much variety in food. Most meals consist of rice, beans, greens, and some sort of meat, which is probably very flavorless and tough, because their beef is already tough and they don't cook it where it has flavor. But I got used to it. I just grew to love the people there. I grew to love their culture. I wish that I knew more of the language, because I wanted to connect even more with the people there. As it was, I could only connect with the handful of people I met that spoke English well. So some people I could connect with without English, because we could express emotion, we could communicate through hand gestures, which is something I learned to do a lot of there. But I just fell in love with basically everything about it, about the Tanzania. So I was not wanting to come back to the States. I wasn't really wanting to go to Italy for a debrief with the other interns. I wanted to see them, I wanted to hear their stories, I needed to debrief, but I wasn't ready to go back because Tanzania became home. And so I kept on thinking of the missionary David Livingstone that went to Africa. And when he died, his body was taken back to England or Scotland, but his heart was buried in Africa. And that's the kind of feeling that I had to some degree, was that I left a part of my heart there. However, even though this says closing thoughts, it's not the last slide. Don't show the last slide yet. Because there was one very touristy thing I did while I was over there. I went to Serengeti, because that happens to be in Tanzania. It's one of their two main tourist attractions, that and Mount Kilimanjaro, which I got to see from the airplane, not close up, but it's Serengeti I got to go to. And I could have put a bunch of pictures from that in here. As it is, if you want to see some, just come up to me and ask. We got to see a bunch of animals I never thought I would see in real life, aside from a zoo. Giraffes, wildebeest, hyenas. We saw a bunch of hippopotami. I learned that they would congregate in groups of anywhere from 30 to 50. And so we would see just hordes of them just chilling in the water. Never saw too much of anyone because they always were up to their eyeballs in the water. But the one animal that everyone has kind of been asking if I got to see, and I've been diverting the question, next slide please, was the lion. We did actually get to see one when we were there. In fact, the guy that took me, Pastor Tukiko, got so excited when he saw it that he kind of forgot to use English for part of his sentence and used the Swahili word for lion, which is Simba. If any of you are familiar with The Lion King, Yes, they named the main character Lion. But we didn't get to see the lion. He actually had a carcass that he was guarding. And there was a hyena that saw the carcass, smelled it, decided to go get some food, and then the lion got up and walked closer to the carcass. The hyena decided to walk away with its life. So, in conclusion, the summer was very good, very impactful. So, thank you for your prayers and support.
Well, do you have any questions for me? Any questions?
How close was that line?
Not too close. So that was a very